Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Josh Kaiser, who is the Managing Director of Tovi. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Simon. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, you?
Yeah, not bad at all. Good to be here.
Good. We're glad you can join us. So I think today's going to be a really interesting conversation. We'll get into the background of Tovi, how it's helping organizations, and kind of introduce you, where people can find you for further conversation, etc. But before we do all of that, let's find out a bit about Josh. So tell us about yourself, Josh. What's your kind of career background? How did you end up doing what you're doing today?
Sure. It was kind of a funny one, to be honest, because I actually started out of university doing economics and decided I got into my head I wanted to be an investment banker. Went and did a few internships in Singapore and New York, and very quickly realized it was not my cup of tea. Staring at balance sheets all day was really not what I had in mind for my life. So I came out of uni, sort of didn't know what I wanted to do next. Ended up going to do a master's in Edinburgh, and sort of started a course which was, I think it was like applied entrepreneurship. And one of the modules within the course was focused around creating a business plan and, to do something trivial when you start out. And I sort of took it too far in a sense, and ended up building my first startup off the back of that, which was a platform for women to create their own shoes. So we had sort of like this online, CAD style drag and drop system, and then we had a factory in China that would build them. So I basically, did that for a while. Didn't work out. Learned a lot from it. Started a few other things, and then ended up moving to the UK in the mid 2010s. And specifically London. Ended up in consulting, and very quickly realized that this AI piece, I think this was about the time that Facebook Messenger had just opened up their API. And, I sort of realized that this bot thing could be massive. Ended up investing a little bit of resource and time into it, got a few of my colleagues involved, and we ended up building an accelerator platform that was fairly successful. We sold that to a few different, large enterprise clients in the financial services space. And then I basically ended up moving across to a few different firms, sort of rinsing and repeating and building out my expertise, and then joined Tovi towards, I think it was October 2021. Yeah, so just as we were coming out of the pandemic.
Excellent. So you've seen the world, decided some things weren't for you, tried some other things, built a kind of knowledge bank with the education piece, and then arrived at Tovi. So for those that might not know what you guys do there, do you want to give us a bit of information about the company, and if we, I suppose, focus on retail primarily, how you're helping retailers at the moment?
Sure. So Tovi AI, basically, I would call it as a conversational AI company. And if for people that are not familiar with the term conversational AI, essentially it's technologies that help sort of emulate or replace tasks that would traditionally require a human to have a conversation. So very much focused around things like, automating contact centers, automating customer service, first line support. But actually, funny enough, the industry is actually moving towards applications that are, driving revenue as well. So it's not just about how do we cut costs in business, but how do we create new experiences and, new opportunities using this type of technology. And basically what we have is sort of two layers. We have what we call our conversational cloud. So it's a SaaS platform where we have a variety of different technologies that sit on that platform across, sort of across the entire conversational AI spectrum. And that will be everything from like speech to text and text to speech technologies to sort of, low code bot abstraction engines, natural language processing modules. And then on top of that, we sort of have a second layer, which is professional services, whereby, we work with clients using our own proprietary technology to help build actual solutions that solve real world problems. So as opposed to just giving a customer technology and letting them figure it out themselves, which in some cases they do, but more often than not, we work with them to figure out, okay, what's an interesting problem? How do we use the technology to solve it? And then we work with them to build that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the kind of thing when I'm going on a website and it pops up in the bottom right, or we've got the speech bubbles, it says,
That's
how can I help?
right, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That could be one application of it, but we do a lot of stuff with voice as well. So telephony-based channels. In fact, we even have if they call them bots or robots, chatbots, virtual assistants. Whichever flavor you like, that actually reach out to customers proactively as well via the phone, depending on markets that allow it. We do omni-channel as well, so any sort of live chat or chat interaction platform that has APIs that allow us to hook into it, we can facilitate interactions through that. So we do a lot of stuff with WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger, funnily enough, used to be sort of the big hitter, but it's sort of dropped in terms of usefulness as a platform. And even some Southeast Asian and Asian markets, they have platforms like WeChat as well, which are particularly popular. So basically any chat-based platform or any interface that you would traditionally use to have a conversation with somebody, we can run an automation on top of that.
Amazing. And that's kind of the online part, but how are you kind of blending that with the physical retail? How are you getting involved there?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting proposition that we've been sort of in the process of bringing to market over the past year. And, funny enough, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory as to the idea and where it came from. So I don't know if you're familiar with Curry's Piece It World. I think they've rebranded to just Curry's now. But for those of the audience that perhaps are not aware of them, they're a large retail chain in the UK. They have, they have an online presence, of course, but they have, these large superstores, and predominantly they sell things like electronics and, home equipment like fridges and washing machines and things like that. So, there was one where I used to live close by, and I'd frequent it on occasion, if I'm looking to buy something in particular. And it was very frustrating for me because I was going in with the intention of spending a significant chunk of change. If I'm buying a new fridge or something, that, it could be £1,000, £2,000 worth of money I'm willing to spend on a product here. And I'm going into the store because I'm expecting that I'm going to be able to at least have a conversation with, a trained salesperson. Or, I'm not looking at it as a salesperson. I'm looking at it as a trained person who knows about the product and can educate me on it, answer my questions so that I can at least walk away with a purchase decision that I'm comfortable and confident about. And very often I'd walk into the store and, try to find somebody to actually help me, and find that either they were severely understaffed or the staff were poorly trained. And more often than not, what would end up happening is I would look at the product and then I would go home and find a different retailer online and just buy it from them. So what we've tried to do is sort of take that experience, which I think is something that is not just unique to me, and a lot of end customers that are doing physical retail shopping probably experience. And how do we augment it and provide value for the customer, but also for the business? Okay. And so what we've tried to do is essentially take that role that would traditionally be held by a person in store, and how do we provide sort of a digital technology overlay that allows customers to do things like self-service and self-discovery themselves using chatbots. And an interesting application of this is using like interaction touch points like QR codes or NFC tags. Right, like you might have an NFC tag, and for people who are not familiar with NFC, it stands for near field communication. It's similar to what you would do if you were going down the tube. You tap your phone to pay, and you can interact with these QR codes and NFC tags. And what will end up happening is we end up bringing up a virtual assistant. And the experience of this virtual assistant can vary depending on the customer and what they're trying to do. But fundamentally, this virtual assistant will be trained on a specific product, i.e. the specific product that you're interested in interacting with. So if we go back to the example of the fridge that I was talking about previously, it's things like, well, if I'm buying a fridge, I want to know, what kind of power consumption does it have? Like, will it fit? Like, what are the dimensions? Will it fit in my flat or my house? What kind of finance options are you giving me? It's a large purchase. Like, are finance options around it? Like, are there other colors? Is there a warranty on it if things go wrong? So all these different types of questions, which you would expect to have with a real an interaction with a real person, we try to augment with these types of virtual assistants. Because there is value to the physical shopping experience. This is why retailers that still have all this, large real estate space continue to invest and keep some of them. Although we have seen that shrinking, is because there is value to going out, touching and feeling the product, and seeing what it looks like in real life. We haven't really got there yet with e-commerce, although there are some interesting applications in VR and AR that sort of trying to bridge that gap. So what we're trying to do is saying, right, okay, there is value to this experience, but how do we supplement that and provide all the benefits that you would get from, say, an online experience combined with that physical touch and feel that you can get from actually, going and looking at the product. Similarly as well, from the perspective of the business, what's interesting is that you can then start to use strategies that you would normally apply, if you were an actual salesperson, or which have been available, say, through traditional e-commerce routes. So things like creating urgency with the customer. If you've only got one of these fridges in stock, it might be a good idea or commercial strategy to tell that to the customer. So we can hook into those APIs, and let the customer know, actually, there's only one of these fridges left in stock. You better act now. Otherwise, that fridge might be gone, right? So creating that urgency, or things like social proof as well. I've had 3 people ask me this same question today. Perhaps given the lack of stock and the interest, right, the demand and supply sort of separation here, it might be in your interest to act now if this is something of interest. And then even going further as well, so doing things like cross-selling and upselling. So it sort of moves the tool away purely from, just augmenting or your sales personnel's capability to it actually becoming a salesperson for you, right? And, suggesting, actually, I think, given the conversation we've had around the parameters that you're looking for with respect to the product, perhaps this other product is better suited, right, as a good salesperson would do. So I realize I've rambled on a little bit there, but hopefully that gives you a flavor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think my key takeouts for that are, clearly it can supplement workforce, which is going to be a massive advantage in, I think, the coming months where economic climate's tough. Mm-hmm. People are really struggling to recruit and retain, which it gives you some capability and opportunity. It's, I suppose, my leisure. So as my journey browsing around the store, but also fulfills the brand journey of, here are the add-ons. Like you say, you've only got one left. This is the next model up, and the benefits and features are. So I can see a potential upsell opportunity as well, which sometimes may get missed by humans. It's just fact of life.
That's very true, and the ability to hook into many different data sources in semi-real time and do that, allows these bots to sort of have, more predictable trajectories in terms of what they're offering customers, say a human being would have, which people forget things. It's part of being human. I think, one of the pieces that you just hit on as well, which I think is particularly interesting, is, the at your leisure piece. So we're living in a world that's sort of increasingly more conscious about things like mental health and things like anxiety. I had a previous partner who had a lot of issues around, anxiety and things like that, and interacting with people in a social setting sometimes. So there's actually an interesting use of this technology with respect to, say, products, for example, that might, start that kind of anxiety. So things in the pharmaceutical space. Obviously, we've talked about, curries as an example and a use case here, but I think the technology and the use case sort of like sit wider than that. So, for example, if you might imagine going into the Boots pharmacy, and you're looking at certain products that maybe like female hygiene products or products to do with, I don't know, STDs or something that's embarrassing, has a certain level of embarrassment, or that you don't want to interact with a person about. This technology is a nice supplementer because it allows you to get the information that you need within reason. Of course, there are certain rules that we have to follow when we're talking about, giving out medical advice and things like that. But it allows you to, again, sort of circumvent having to speak to that person, but still get the value of the physical shopping experience and all the information that you need to make, that informed purchase decision.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And talk to me about the kind of the barriers. So people will say, yeah, but it's not a human, and I don't like speaking to machines, and what data is it processing from me, and all that kind of stuff. So what typical barriers do people have when they're starting to enter the world of AI, chatbots, all that kind of stuff?
No, it's a really good point. And it's, we are nowhere near being at a place yet, at least with this technology in production and commercially available to most businesses, where it's going to fully replace human experiences, and nor where it might convince the vast majority of people that it is a human being, or as opposed to a computer system. In fact, in some markets, like for example in the US, I think there are laws that that specifically prohibit you from being able to sort of if you like, trick the customer into believing that the robot is in fact a human being. I think the key to that sort of problem is around managing expectations and being clear and honest with the customer. So, big part of conversational AI is something we call conversation design. These systems, although great at automating specific problem spaces, they still have to be handcrafted to a certain degree at the moment. And that handcrafting is all about crafting a really compelling user experience that takes into account the situation, the customer's expectations, and tries to manage that with like cleverly worded copy and sort of trying to preempt a little bit how somebody might interact in that particular situation. So being very open with the customer about the limitations of what they're dealing with, like what it's scoped to, what it's capable of. And also giving customers a way out if they don't want to interact with it, right? So these interaction points, I mentioned QR codes and NFC tags with respect to this specific use case. Those are pieces of advertisement interaction points which the business can basically put out and the customer interacts with at will. So they are not being forced into this experience. It's something that they choose to partake into. And as part of the actual experience, if we go back to the fridge example, right, the job of that bot is to educate the customer immediately before they start interacting with the bot, that bot is specifically trained to help you with that fridge and nothing else, right? And give you context about what it's trained to help you with. Similarly, if I were to go and speak to a person that may be lacking knowledge in some areas, and we are about to embark in, say, a very open conversation, they might choose to warn me beforehand and not, waste their time on certain aspects that they might not be trained on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I like that in terms of being upfront about what the use is, what the expertise is, to really, really clarify the purpose, rather than it being an open text box that people are typing into or speaking to and it going off at tangents or decision trees that it's not trained to do. Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads me on to, I suppose, the next point of, is it the kind of thing that you need to start simple with and then build complexity, or do you jump in at the complex end to simplify it from a user's point of view? What's the typical journey that your customers will take?
It really depends what you're trying to achieve, and what your KPIs are that you're looking to track at the outset. But I would say it's always better to start simple. We talk a lot about, although maybe we talk a lot about it, we don't practice it as much as we should as an industry, but we talk a lot about minimal viable products, about basically building the minimum slice of something that you can go out and realistically test with a customer, get real world feedback on and then build on top of it. So it's definitely better to start at the lower end piece and basically build out from that. So my advice would always be to start with providing first and foremost value to the customer, right? Before you start to maybe leverage some of the commercial strategies that we've talked about, in terms of the upsell and the cross-sell and the social proof and creating urgency and so on. Because what you want to do is you want to create a utility for the customer that keeps them coming back and using the service, right? Because they find usefulness in it. And then you can start to layer on the additional pieces of value that might drive value more for the business as opposed to for the customer itself, right? But if you get the customer hooked in and they're getting the information they need, because at the end of the day, a client doesn't really care about necessarily, they want a good user experience in most things they do in life, but they don't really care about the medium by which they achieve that to a certain degree. What they're more bothered about is getting their problem solved. So if I'm looking to go buy that fridge, I care about, how, is it going to fit in my closet, and can I, what's the warranty on it if things go wrong? How I get that information might be largely irrelevant. So what you want to do is just make that experience as compelling as possible. so that with as few barriers as possible, so that they then find, oh, you know what, that was really useful. Next time I come back to the store and I'm interested in buying a washing machine, I might do the same thing, as opposed to going hunting down a salesperson to get that input.
Brilliant. No, that makes complete sense as well. So I think we've had a really interesting conversation. If people want to find out more, Josh, about you, about how they can kind of get on the journey, discuss requirements, where's the best place for them to do that?
Sure. I mean, obviously, we're always interested in talking to customers about commercial, opportunities, but we're also interested in just having general discussions. Meeting other people in the industry that are doing interesting things. You can find us at tovi.ai. It's our website. We've got a few use cases on there as well, so you can see some of the stuff that we've done with our clients. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation as well, this solution layer that sits on top of our technology is just one aspect of what we do, because we think, like, as a good market differentiator, we want to go to customers with real world applications of the technology, as opposed to just giving them a platform and letting them run for free, unguided, perhaps when they lack a little bit of expertise in the space. But if you want to use our technology platform as well, there's a free trial, and you guys can easily sign up and test out. And we have some really interesting technologies, one of which is a little bit of tangential to this, but is actually a platform to allow you to train custom voice models. So you can create text-to-speech models that basically sound like yourself, or a caricature of something. So we have some really interesting tech, and I encourage anyone who is interested to go out and try.
Brilliant. So lots of innovation, lots of moving things forward, and I think quite timely in a world where people are really struggling to recruit and retrain people and retain people even, and how that plays into blending that physical colleague, physical store with the whole online stroke digital way of interacting. So really timely, Josh, really timely. Yeah. So final question for me, just to wrap up then. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Oof, I hate these questions. They always put you on the spot.
Get some good answers. They're doing it that way.
I'll tell you what, my father gave me a very good one. My dad was big businessman in his time, and a lot of what I learned about business I learned from him, funnily enough, and less from my degrees and and my time in investment banking. It's certainly build and keep your networks. I think given the change that the world's gone through in the last 2 years with respect to COVID. I think there's some great benefits that have come out of remote working, and in fact, most of us at Tovi are all sort of spread across the world, and we remote work for the most part. But yeah, my concern is for the younger generation that are just coming out of university. Networks are invaluable in building, long-term commercial pipelines with people, because at the end of the day, people like to do business with people they like. People like to buy products and services from people they like and that they've met before and have built trust with. And a lot of us, I'm going to call myself an old timer, even though I'm only 31. As old timers, we've already gone through that process of building our networks, and now we get to reap the benefits a little bit of this, remote working aspect. But for the young people that are coming up, young guys and girls that are coming up from university or just going into their first job, try and build those networks as much as possible, because they will pay dividends in the long term.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And certainly places like retail are a small world. It's amazing the amount of people that you meet early in your career at a certain level that you then see later in your career that have had a big influence or can even help you get to the next level. So yeah, wise words from your father there, Josh. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure to chat. We'll put the link to the website and your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. But until we speak next, Josh, take care and thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me, Simon. Really appreciate it. It was great having a chat.